One phone call. That's all it took. One moment. I was a pediatric nurse in Seattle, wrapping up another long day of caring for sick children. The next, I was $623,000 in debt for a mortgage I'd never taken. The address, my sister's house. That night, as I packed for our bi-weekly family dinner, I also packed something else, a police report. I never imagined I'd be the one to tear my family apart. But I also never imagined my own sister would betray me like this. This is a story about family, about trust, about what happens when the person you love most becomes the one who hurts you the deepest. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, if you've ever had to choose between protecting yourself or keeping the peace, then you're not alone. I'm Heather Wilson, and this is how I found out my sister stole my identity to buy her dream house. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever experienced betrayal from someone close. I'd love to hear your story. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me, because this isn't just about a house. It's about everything that came crashing down when the truth came out. Before everything unraveled, I had what most people would call a quiet, decent life. Nothing glamorous, nothing wild. But it was mine, and it made sense. I'd been working as a registered nurse at Seattle Grace Hospital for 6 years, mostly in the pediatric ward. It wasn't easy work. Some days broke your heart clean in two. But I loved it. There's something incredibly grounding about caring for children when they're at their most vulnerable. It made me feel useful, even on the hardest days. My colleagues were like family. We brought each other coffee during night shifts. We cried in the break room when a patient didn't make it. We celebrated birthdays with cupcakes at the nurse's station. People knew me as the dependable one, the nurse who always picked up extra shifts, who remembered patients' siblings' names, who watered the plants in the break room when no one else did. Speaking of plants, my apartment in Ballard was small, a modest one-bedroom with creaky floors and thin walls. But it was mine, and I'd made it feel like home. Almost every piece of furniture was second-hand, but chosen with care. And everywhere you looked, plants, hanging from the ceiling, lining the windowsills, climbing bookshelves like they had somewhere to be. My friends used to joke that I lived in a greenhouse, but those green things, they kept me grounded, alive, even on the days I came home too tired to cry. My family lived just across the bridge in Bellevue. My parents, David and Carol Wilson, still resided in the same 2-story colonial house we grew up in. Dad had retired from accounting a couple years back, and Mom was still teaching 4th grade, insisting she'd only quit when the kids stopped being interesting. Knowing her, that meant never. They were good people, honest, hard-working. The kind of parents who packed our lunches with sticky notes and never missed a school play. They loved their daughters fiercely, me and Amanda. Amanda, my older sister by 3 years. She was always the star of the family, the one with the spotlight. In high school, she was homecoming queen, valedictorian, captain of the debate team. I was the one holding the camcorder. Quiet, bookish, shy. She sparkled, I observed, and I adored her for it. Amanda wasn't just the golden child, she was my protector. When I got bullied in middle school, she stood between me and the mean girls like a human shield. When I failed my driving test, She took me to get ice cream and told me the instructor probably just hated women. She could be loud, opinionated, but never cruel. At least, I didn't think so. As adults, our paths diverged. She went into real estate, built a booming business selling high-end homes in Seattle's poshest neighborhoods. She married Brian Parker, a financial advisor with a jawline out of a toothpaste commercial and a talent for making spreadsheets sound sexy. They were the picture-perfect couple. Tall, tanned, dressed in coordinated outfits on Instagram, sunset beach photos, cocktail galas, brunches on boats, and me still single, still renting, still nursing. But we stayed close. We met for coffee. We texted, and twice a month, without fail. We had dinner with our parents every other Sunday. Sometimes Amanda would toss out well-meaning digs. You really need to start thinking about investing. Heather, don't you ever want something bigger? That credit score of yours is going to waste in that tiny apartment. I chalked it up to big sister energy. She wasn't trying to insult me. Right then, about 8 months before that fateful call from the bank, Amanda and Brian bought a house. Not just any house. A gorgeous craftsman in Queen Anne, the kind with ivy-wrapped pillars and sweeping views of the Puget Sound. The kind of house people drove by slowly, just to dream. They hosted a family tour a week after closing. Amanda walked me through each room like it was a museum. Viking appliances, heated floors, a walk-in closet the size of my living room. Someday, you'll have this too. Sis, she told me, squeezing my shoulder. You just need to aim higher. I laughed at the time. Not out of joy, more like discomfort. But I didn't say anything. I never challenged Amanda. I never really had to. I didn't know then that she'd already aimed higher. Using my name, it started like any other Tuesday. The hospital halls were buzzing with the usual blend of chaos and caffeine. I was halfway through my shift, tending to a sweet 7-year-old named Tyler. He was recovering from an appendectomy and insisted on showing me his bravery scar at least twice an hour. I was helping him change his bandages, humming softly to distract him, when my phone buzzed in my scrub pocket. Normally, I'd ignore it during patient care, but I'd been waiting on a call from the ER about my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chan, who'd been admitted the night before. So I excused myself and stepped into the hallway. Hello, this is Heather. There was a pause. Then a voice, male, polite, efficient. Ms. Wilson, this is Craig Donovan with Washington Mutual Bank. I'm calling about your missed mortgage payments. We've sent several notices, but unfortunately, we haven't received payment in over 90 days. I frowned. Mortgage, I repeated, laughing a little. There must be some mistake. I don't have a mortgage. I rent. I've never owned property in my life. Another pause. Longer this time. When he spoke again, his tone had changed, still calm, but condescending, like he was dealing with someone in denial. According to our records, Ms. Wilson, you took out a mortgage in January, $623,000 for a property on Highland Drive. You made payments for 3 months. Nothing since April. Highland Drive. That name hit something in the back of my brain. Familiar. Too familiar. I blinked. Wait. Highland Drive, I asked. That's my sister's street. I'm sorry, the banker asked. No, this is a mistake. I said quickly. I didn't buy a house. I never applied for a mortgage. And I definitely don't make enough to qualify for a loan like that. I'm a nurse, not a surgeon. Well, The application lists your annual income as $192,000 with a credit score of 782s, he replied smoothly. We have complete documentation, including your signature on multiple forms. Perhaps you could come into the branch to review everything in person. His words felt like static in my ears. $192,000. My actual income was less than half that. A forged signature, my credit score, my name. The call ended, but my brain didn't. I walked back into Tyler's room like a ghost. I nodded at the chart, changed a dressing, said all the right things, but I wasn't really there. My thoughts were somewhere else, spinning, churning. Highland Drive, Amanda's street, Amanda's house. No, it couldn't be. But what if it was? After my shift ended, I didn't even go home. I went straight to the bank. The branch manager, a man named Richard Peterson, met me in a private office. His expression was wary, like he'd already dealt with too many fraud cases and wasn't sure if I was the victim or the scammer. He slid a folder across the desk. These are the documents we have on file, he said. Mortgage application, income verification, closing disclosures, everything. Take your time. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. There it was, page after page of legal forms. My full name, my social security number, my date of birth, my employer, and my signature. Except, it wasn't mine. It was close, unnervingly close. But the loop in the H was off, the E too wide. The R had that little curl I never make. Could I get copies of these, I asked, my voice strangely calm. Technically, these are your documents, Richard said cautiously. But under the circumstances, I can make duplicates. Ms. Wilson, if you didn't apply for this loan, I strongly suggest you contact the police. This appears to be identity theft, and possibly fraud. I nodded. On the outside, I was composed. On the inside, screaming. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by the copies Richard had given me. I stared at the signatures, the loan amounts, the repayment schedule, the escrow paperwork, the name on the house Heather Wilson, the address 4872 Highland Drive, Amanda's house. No, there had to be some explanation, a clerical error, a data breach. Maybe someone had mistakenly entered my information instead of hers. Maybe. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't a mistake. It was a theft, a betrayal. And not from a stranger, from someone who knew me intimately. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 2 years. I couldn't show up to work, not when my hands were shaking too badly to hold a clipboard, not when my brain felt like it had shattered into puzzle pieces I didn't know how to reassemble. My apartment, once my little oasis, suddenly felt contaminated. Every corner whispered the same question. Could my sister really have done this? I tried to be rational. Maybe there was an innocent explanation. Maybe Amanda had co-signed on something and the bank got it wrong. Maybe someone else had used my information. Maybe it wasn't her. But the documents, the mortgage, the income statements, the forged signatures, all too precise, too personal, too deliberate. That day, I contacted Equifax. The woman on the other end of the line sounded tired, like she'd heard it all before, until I explained the situation. Hang on. Miss Wilson, she said, typing rapidly. Okay, we're seeing a few things here. The mortgage? Yes. But also a home equity line of credit, $150,000. 3 credit cards opened within the last year, with limits between $20,000 and $30,000 each. Oh, and a personal loan, $45,000. I felt physically ill. I didn't open any of those. Understood, ma'am. I'm placing a fraud alert on your file and will email you instructions for disputing each account. You should also contact Experian and TransUnion as soon as possible. By nightfall, I'd spoken to all 3 major credit bureaus. My credit score, once a respectable 724, had plunged to 546. Because of her. Because of them. The next day, I met with Diane Schwartz, a financial advisor a friend recommended. Her office was warm, lined with potted plants and framed motivational quotes, but no amount of cozy lighting could ease the dread in my gut. I slid the folder across her desk. She reviewed it silently for several minutes, then looked up. "This is definitely identity theft," she said, gently. "And I have to say, it's unusually sophisticated. Whoever did this knew exactly what verification details would be required." I nodded, swallowed, then said it out loud for the first time. It was my sister. Diane's expression didn't change, but her posture did a subtle shift from professional curiosity to protective concern. That complicates things. Family fraud is, unfortunately, more common than people think, but legally and emotionally, it's uniquely painful. I blinked hard, trying to keep my composure. "What should I do?" "You need to file a police report," she said. "Without it, the banks will treat you as a co-conspirator. But I understand if you're hesitant. These situations often involve guilt, pressure, even fear of losing your family. Fear, no. It wasn't fear. It was grief. Because even now, even with my credit ruined, my name dragged through the mud, a part of me still hoped Amanda had an explanation, a mistake, a plan to make it right. But deep down, I already knew better. The following week, I hired a handwriting expert. His name was Marcus Bell. He wore glasses low on his nose and spoke in clipped, careful sentences like each word was a data point. I gave him the mortgage documents, along with samples of my actual signature from my passport, driver's license, and hospital paperwork. After about 40 minutes, he set down his magnifier and looked up. "These are forgeries," he said. "Very good ones, but forgeries nonetheless. The pressure is inconsistent. There are signs of hesitation here, and here. The forger was copying, not writing naturally. Could you testify to that if needed?" "Yes. I'd need to complete a formal report." But this meets the threshold. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Amanda didn't just use my name. She became me on paper. At least, enough to fool the banks. Enough to sink my financial future. And I still didn't know why. That night, I started digging. No hacking. No illegal access. Just observation. I went through Amanda's social media, their real estate company website, her LinkedIn. I called a few mutual friends under the guise of catching up. I learned that Amanda's business had been hit hard during the market downturn, that Brian had quietly left his firm amid rumors, that their once flashy lifestyle had started to look more desperate than decadent. And then came the final blow. My friend Stephanie, who worked at a luxury car dealership, dropped a bombshell over coffee. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," she said, "but Amanda came in a few months ago to buy a new Mercedes. When they ran her credit, it was bad. Like, scary bad. Brian ended up paying cash, but they argued in the parking lot for, 15 minutes. He said, We can't keep doing this. The house was risky enough. The house. My house. Later that week, while combing through my inbox, I noticed something strange. Some of the accounts opened in my name had e-statements sent to an email address just one character off from mine. Instead of Heather Wilson, 93agmail.com, they were sent to Heather Wilson, 3agmail.com. It looked almost identical at a glance, but it wasn't mine. It was hers. Deliberate, clever, cruel. I sat in the dark that night, surrounded by folders, screenshots, copies of forged documents, the weight of it all pressing down on me. My sister, the person I trusted most, had stolen my identity to fund a fantasy she couldn't afford, a fantasy she chose to protect by destroying my reality. And the worst part, she was sitting at family dinners, laughing, pouring wine, giving me career advice, all while knowing what she'd done. I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a clerical error. This was betrayal, intentional, personal, and unforgivable. The police report sat in my bag like a brick, heavy, hard-edged, unignorable. That Sunday was our usual family dinner, lasagna night at my parents' house in Bellevue. Only, it wouldn't be usual. It would be the last night our family ever sat at that table the same way again. I spent almost an hour deciding what to wear, which sounds ridiculous, I know, but somehow, it felt important. I chose a navy dress. Not flashy, not casual, just serious. I did my makeup slowly, precisely. Amanda wouldn't see me shaken. Not tonight. I parked a block away and sat in the car for a moment, breathing. In, out. Don't cry. Not yet. The Wilsons' house looked the same as always. Light pouring through the windows. My dad's music playing faintly through the screen door. My mom's lasagna scent drifting through the evening air. But it wasn't the same. Not for me. As I approached, I spotted Amanda's white Range Rover in the driveway, the one she bought to celebrate closing a big deal. I wondered if that deal had a forged signature on it too. My mother opened the door, beaming. "Heather, you look beautiful, honey, but serious. Everything okay at the hospital?" "Fine. Mom, just a long week." I lied, hugging her. Inside, the usual scene. My dad in his recliner with a glass of Oregon Pinot. Amanda in the kitchen with Brian, laughing, radiant in her cream blouse. Perfectly styled hair framing a dazzling smile. You'd never know she was standing in a house bought with stolen identity and lies. "Heather," she called out. "Finally. I was just telling Mom about this amazing new specialist I met at the club. You should talk to him. He's hiring the audacity." "I'm happy where I am," I said, flatly. If she noticed the chill in my voice, she ignored it. Dinner began as usual. Mark and Jessica arrived with their 2 kids. Amanda chatted about vacation plans and contractors. Brian made a joke about mortgages being a nightmare these days. I almost laughed. We passed lasagna, poured wine. I kept waiting for the right moment. Then my dad looked over at me. "You're quiet tonight, kiddo." "Rough week," I set down my fork. "You could say that." My mom leaned in, concern etching her forehead. "Anything you want to talk about," Amanda cut in smoothly. "Oh, leave her be, Mom. Not everyone has to process things out loud like me," she said with a laugh. "Some people just mull it over in private." mull it over. She'd mulled over stealing my name, my credit, my future. Actually, I said, turning to Amanda, there is something I need to talk about with all of you. The room fell still. Even the kids stopped their chatter. My mother, bless her instincts, immediately turned to my brother. Mark, why don't you take the children into the living room? They've earned some screen time. As they filed out, I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. What's that? Sweetheart, my dad asked. I placed the folder gently on the table, rested my hand on it. This is a police report. Amanda's smile faltered. Brian froze. My mother paled. Police report, she echoed. Heather, what happened? I've been the victim of identity theft, I said, and fraud. I looked straight at Amanda as I slid the folder across the table. And the person who did it is sitting right here. She didn't move, didn't blink. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice an octave too high. Open it, I said. Brian reached for the folder, but Amanda stopped him. Heather, there must be some mistake. This sounds crazy. 2 weeks ago, I continued, I got a call from Washington Mutual about mortgage payments I'd supposedly missed for a house I'd never bought. The address, 4872 Highland Drive. Your house. Amanda gasps. My mother covered her mouth. My father sat back, stunned. That can't be, Mom whispered. That's Amanda and Brian's house. Yes, I said. A house they bought using my name. My credit? I never applied for the mortgage. But someone forged my signature. Someone used my social security number. Someone who had access to my documents. Amanda stood suddenly. This is insane. You think I'd do that? You think I'd steal from my own sister? A handwriting expert disagrees, I said calmly. So does the IP address that submitted the mortgage application. It traces back to your old condo. Brian stood too, tense. We should go, he said to Amanda. This is a setup. My father's voice, when it came, was low and shaking with fury. Sit down, Brian. Both of you. Now. Amanda didn't sit, but she didn't leave, either. Her mask was slipping. I saw the cracks, the calculation, the fear. You want the truth, Amanda snapped. Fine. We hit a rough patch. Brian's firm went under. The market tanked. My commissions dried up. We were about to lose everything. We didn't have a choice. So you stole my identity? I asked, my voice rising. You saddled me with $800,000 in debt. It was supposed to be temporary. Amanda cried. We were going to refinance. Fix it. You weren't even using your credit for anything important. Not important, I whispered. Not being able to rent, buy, or borrow because you tanked my score isn't important. My mom began to cry. My dad just looked broken. Amanda turned to them, pleading. We were desperate. You don't understand what it's like keeping up appearances, expectations, people looking at us like we were failures. You weren't a failure, my dad said, his voice hollow. Until now. Brian exploded. I told you this would happen, he barked at Amanda. You wouldn't listen. And now we're going to jail. Amanda glared back. You didn't stop me either. You signed off on all of it. The room fell into stunned silence. My father stood. Get out, he said. Both of you. Out of my house. Amanda opened her mouth, closed it. Tears welled in her eyes. Dad, I said, out. They left without another word. Just the sound of a purse strap, the scrape of a chair, and the front door closing, too softly for what had just happened. The three of us sat there for what felt like hours. My mother cried quietly. My father nursed his wine. I stared at the empty chair Amanda had just left behind, still warm. "What happens now?" my dad asked. "The district attorney will decide whether to press charges," I said. "But Detective Thompson said they have enough to proceed." "And the debts?" he asked. Voice suddenly accountant calm. "I'm working with the banks, but it's a long process. Nothing's guaranteed." That night, as I drove home, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt hollow, like something inside me had cracked, and no amount of justice could glue it back together. Amanda wasn't just my sister. She had been my person. And now she was a stranger. One I'd have to face in court. 3 days after the confrontation at dinner, I got the call. Detective Rachel Thompson's voice was steady, calm, but her words echoed in my chest like a fire alarm. "Ms. Wilson, the arrest warrants have been executed. Your sister and her husband were taken into custody at their home this morning. Their home, the one I was still legally responsible for, the one I never chose. They've been charged with identity theft, mortgage fraud, forgery, and conspiracy." I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there. No screaming, no relief, just a thick, pulsing numbness. That afternoon, the story broke on the local news. I wasn't prepared for that part. I thought it would be quiet, private. It wasn't. The headline read, "Prominent Seattle realtor and financial advisor arrested in $800,000 identity theft scheme." Right beneath it, in smaller print, victim is realtor's younger sister. They didn't name me, but anyone who knew Amanda knew who I was. By nightfall, my phone was flooded. Old classmates, distant relatives, curious coworkers. "Are you okay? Is it true? How could Amanda do this? Are they going to prison?" I turned off my phone, then my laptop, then the lights, and I sat in the dark, listening to the silence. It was louder than the phone ever was. My parents didn't call that night, or the next. When they finally did, it wasn't to check on me. It was to talk about her. "Your father and I visited Amanda," my mother said carefully, her voice brittle around the edges. "She's not doing well. Neither am I," I wanted to say, but I bit my tongue. She made a terrible mistake. My mom continued, voice cracking, "But she's still your sister." There it was. The first nudge, soft, subtle, wrapped in guilt and nostalgia. But I knew what it was. Over the next few weeks, the pressure grew. Not from strangers, from inside the family. "She has 2 children, Mom reminded me. "She's apologized," Dad added. "She didn't mean to ruin your life," my aunt said on Facebook Messenger. I wanted to scream, but instead, I kept showing up to work, kept answering lawyers' emails, kept untangling the web of financial devastation my sister left behind. One night, my mom called crying. They might go to prison. Heather, Harper, and Ethan, they don't understand. They miss their parents. They miss you. Can't you talk to the D? They maybe ask for probation instead. That hit harder than I expected, because I did love those kids. Harper and Ethan, 5 and 7. I'd babysat them, bought them storybooks, painted their bedrooms with glow-in-the-dark stars. They were innocent. They didn't deserve any of this. but neither did I. "Mom," I said gently, "she used my identity to rack up over $800,000 in debt. She planned to declare bankruptcy in my name. That's not a mistake. That's a strategy." "I know, honey," she whispered. "But we're losing both our daughters. Can't you find it in your heart?" That's when I stopped listening. A few days later, I sat across from the district attorney, Natalie Chin, a sharp, composed woman who radiated both competence and quiet empathy. "I need to ask," she said, folding her hands. "Are you prepared to follow through? Family cases often fall apart under pressure." I thought about my parents, the calls, the pleading, the unspoken message. Keeping the family intact matters more than your pain. Then I thought about Amanda, sipping wine, giving me investment advice, while draining my credit into oblivion. And I said, "Yes, I'm following through." Natalie nodded. "Good. That's brave. And rare." Meanwhile, my credit recovery moved at a glacial pace. Every phone call to a creditor was a battle. Every dispute form a reminder. Every automated voice that said, "Please hold," chipped away at what little calm I had left. The house went into foreclosure. The credit cards remained in collections. Even after the fraud report, it would take years to erase the damage. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like the one serving a sentence in silence. With paperwork, back at home, my parents tiptoed around the topic. We resumed family dinners, but everything was thinner, more brittle. Conversations revolved around work, groceries, weather, never court dates. My mom still visited Amanda, brought her books, clean socks, brownies. But when I asked how she was, she just said, "Managing." Then one day, I received a letter, not from Amanda, from Harper. The envelope was pink, the handwriting uneven. Inside, "Dear Aunt Heather, I miss you a lot. Grandma says you're mad at Mommy because she did something bad. I get mad at Mommy too when she says I can't have 2 desserts. But I still love her. Do you still love her? Can you come see me and Ethan? We miss you. Love, Harper." I read it 3 times before I cried. Not the silent kind of crying either. The shaking, aching kind that comes from somewhere so deep you didn't even know it was there. The next day, I called my mom. "Can I come see the kids this weekend?" Her voice broke. "They ask about you every day." That weekend, I brought coloring books, bubbles, cookies shaped like stars. We didn't talk about Amanda. We just existed, together. And for the first time in months, I felt something that almost resembled healing. 9 months. That's how long it took from the night I exposed Amanda at the dinner table to the day we stood in the same courtroom. In that time, my life had split into 2 parallel tracks. Track 1 was practical, legal, full of court dates, attorney consultations, and endless documentation. Track 2 was emotional, messy, quiet, full of sleepless nights and whispered conversations with myself. The morning of the plea hearing, I arrived early. I didn't know what to wear, so I defaulted to black slacks and a gray sweater. Professional, neutral, safe. Amanda entered with her lawyer. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not thinner. Exactly, just diminished. As if the months had worn down whatever polish she used to wear like armor. Her hair was pulled back, no jewelry, no designer handbag, just a navy suit and tired eyes. Brian followed a few steps behind, same suit and tie act, but his jaw clenched tight. He didn't look at me. Amanda did. Just once. A brief glance. Then she turned back toward the judge. The courtroom was mostly empty. A couple reporters in the back. No family. Except me. Amanda Parker. The judge began. You have pleaded guilty to 1 count of identity theft, 1 count of fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud. Do you wish to make a statement before sentencing? She stood slowly, turned slightly toward me, and began. Your Honor, I want to speak to my sister. Her voice cracked on the word sister. Heather, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did wasn't just illegal. It was cruel. Calculated. I didn't just steal your name. I stole your trust. I took your stability, your credit, your peace of mind for something as shallow as a house we couldn't afford. I convinced myself I'd fix it before it caught up with us. That we were just borrowing, not stealing. But the truth is, I knew what I was doing, and I did it anyway. She swallowed hard. I was desperate, but desperation isn't an excuse. You were always the good one, the kind one, and I used that against you. A pause. I'm so sorry. Heather, not just for what I did, but for who I became to do it. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. Not because I wasn't moved, but because part of me had waited months, maybe years, to hear those words. And they landed like a stone on still water. Heavy, but real. The judge sentenced Amanda to 18 months in federal prison. Brian received 12 months. Both would serve 3 years supervised release after their time. They were also ordered to pay full restitution. How I had no idea. They had no income, no assets, no credibility. But still the words mattered. Restitution, accountability, consequences. As Amanda was led away, she turned once more. Our eyes met. And for the first time since that call from the bank, I saw my sister. Not the curated Instagram version, not the woman with the Range Rover and the wine glass, but Amanda, flesh and flaw, and pain. In the weeks after sentencing, I waited for something. Closure, peace, satisfaction. But none of it came the way I expected. Because justice isn't neat. It doesn't fix what's been broken. All it does is draw the line between what happened and what comes next. Healing didn't come all at once. There was no big moment where I woke up and said, I'm okay now. It came in pieces. Small, awkward pieces that didn't quite fit until I gave them time. After the sentencing, I tried to go back to normal, back to work, back to errands, back to watering my plants. But everything felt different. I'd walk into my apartment and look at the filing cabinet now locked, and remember how casually I'd once trusted the people who walked through that door. I'd get anxious every time an unknown number called. I'd double-check my bank app like a compulsion. I stopped sharing anything personal online. Stopped leaving my mail in the hallway longer than 5 minutes. It was like my brain had been rewired for survival. Paranoia. But earned. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Elaine Winters. She was in her late 50s, wore earth tones, and had the gentlest voice I'd ever heard. At first, I didn't want to unpack anything. I just wanted tools. A checklist. How do I move on? I asked her during our second session. How do I stop feeling like I'm holding my breath all the time? She didn't give me a checklist. Instead, she said you were betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you. That's not something you get over. That's something you learn to live with differently. Differently. That word stuck with me. My credit score was slowly crawling back. Some of the fraudulent accounts had been removed, but not without months of paperwork, affidavits, and long calls with people who barely tried to sound sympathetic. The house was officially foreclosed, sold at auction for less than the loan. A new family moved in. I drove by once, not to feel nostalgic, just to see it the house that had detonated my life. There were kids on the lawn, laughter, a tricycle in the driveway. I didn't feel envy, just a strange, quiet relief that someone else had taken the ghost out of those walls. About 5 months after Amanda began her sentence, I received another letter. This one wasn't like the others. It wasn't full of apologies or self-pity. It was different. I've been working with a therapist here. Amanda wrote. She told me that accountability isn't just admitting you were wrong. It's naming what you did and how it hurt the person you love. So here it is. I didn't just steal your identity, Heather. I stole your safety, your ability to trust. I made you question everyone around you, even yourself. I took away the belief that your family would never hurt you like that. I see it now, and I will live with that. There was no ask, no manipulation, just truth. I didn't write back, but I didn't throw the letter away either. I kept it in my nightstand, not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement. By spring, I decided I needed a new start. My lease was ending. My old apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a monument to trauma. So I moved. Not far, just far enough. The new place had better security, a locked mailbox, new locks, no memories. It was small, but filled with sunlight. And of course, plants. Always the plants. That summer, restitution payments began trickling in from Amanda and Brian's seized assets. It wasn't much, but it was something. Enough, eventually, for a down payment, a real one, in my name, on a house I chose, not a mansion, not a craftsman in Queen Anne, but a little cottage with white shutters and a backyard big enough for a vegetable garden. I signed the papers with shaking hands, the same kind of forms Amanda had once forged in my name, now filled out honestly, fully, and freely. The loan officer asked if everything was all right. Yes. I said, actually, for once, it is. My housewarming was small, just a few close friends, some finger food, and a bottle of champagne from Stephanie, who arrived with a doormat that read, "Not today, identity thieves." We laughed until we cried. My parents came too. They brought a houseplant and awkward hugs. We didn't talk about Amanda. We didn't need to. My dad pulled me aside at one point and said, "We're proud of you, not just for buying the house, but for everything." That was the closest he'd come to saying he was sorry. And somehow, it was enough. For now. People talk about closure like it's a finish line, like once the court proceedings end, or the apologies arrive, or the debt is cleared, you just close the door and move on. But that's not how it works. Not when the person who hurt you shares your DNA. Not when the scars aren't just legal or financial, but emotional. Scars that show up in conversations, in holiday dinners, in small, offhand comments that mean more than they should. 6 months after I moved into my new home, I added myself to Amanda's visitor list. I didn't go, not yet, but I wanted the option. Some days I felt like I might be ready. Other days, the mere idea of facing her across a prison table made my hands go cold, healing. I'd learned isn't a straight line. It loops, it dips, it doubles back, but it moves forward, even when it's slow. My relationship with my parents was still fragile. We spoke, we saw each other, we tried, but the tension was always there, soft but solid, like a pane of glass between us. They visited Amanda regularly, sent her books, shared updates from Harper and Ethan, and when they mentioned her, they watched my face the way someone watches a candle in the wind. Too much breath, and it might go out. One Sunday dinner, my father surprised me. "Your mother and I saw Amanda yesterday," he said. "She's different." I nodded, unsure what he wanted me to say. Then he added, "I think she finally understands what she did to you." I didn't reply, but something in me softened. Not toward Amanda, not yet, but toward myself. Because for so long, I'd carried the guilt they couldn't help placing on my shoulders. Now, finally, it felt like they saw the weight of what I'd been through. Around that time, I joined a support group for identity theft survivors. It was strange, at first sharing this deeply personal, family-wrecking trauma with strangers, but it helped because they understood. The sleepless nights, the second-guessing, the way even well-meaning people ask, "Couldn't you just let it go?" Through that group, I started volunteering for a nonprofit that helps people navigate identity fraud recovery. Helping others gave my pain purpose. It made the nightmare useful. And in a strange way, that helped me heal too. One afternoon, I received a letter that felt different. It was from Amanda, but this one wasn't about her. It was about me. I used to think I was the strong one, she wrote, the bold one, the risk taker. But watching how you've rebuilt your life, I realize now that real strength looks like quiet persistence, like holding the line when no one else does. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, and I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm sorry for how long it took. I didn't write back, but I kept the letter. And I read it again the day she was released from prison. We haven't seen each other yet. We probably will. One day. But it won't be like it was. Because here's what I've learned. Love and trust are not the same. You can love someone deeply. Even as you keep your distance, you can miss the person they used to be, while accepting they may never be that person again. And you can set boundaries, strong ones, not out of bitterness, but out of survival. I no longer believe that family means forgiveness at all costs. I no longer confuse silence with peace, or self-sacrifice with loyalty. Standing up for myself didn't break my family. Lying did. Stealing did. Deception did. All I did was refuse to carry the weight of someone else's choices. And if that made me the bad guy for a while, I've learned to live with that, because the alternative was living without myself. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for witnessing this story, my story. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, whether it was a friend, a partner, a sibling, I want you to know, you are not weak for hurting. You are not cruel for saying enough, and you are absolutely allowed to choose yourself, even if that means walking away from the people you once loved most. I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this helped you feel less alone, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories of betrayal, healing, and strength. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is, no more.